Hi, this is Carol Watson, and welcome to a new episode of Thrive Talk. We are excited to have Sophie Triollet with us all the way from Belgium. As you know, we really want to capture a very global experience here. So for those of you that are not familiar with Thrive Talks, we really want to just take just 20 minutes and share some of the insights from some of the amazing people around the world that are doing fabulous things in our industry. So welcome, Sophie, to a Thrive Talk.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for having me.
Well, so I know you have spent time around the world and in the US. Tell us about what brought you to Belgium, a little bit about your journey.
Okay. Well, I started my career in Paris, France, and I moved to Salt Lake City and San Diego and Los Angeles for a few years. I actually spent 15 years in Los Angeles. In California, and then 7 years in Los Angeles, and then decided to move back to Europe to be closer to home or to family. And I picked Belgium because my brother lives there, and I wanted to get a different feel for the industry in Brussels compared to the one I knew in Paris.
Fabulous. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the differences are for you. But tell us about your role, who you work for, and what your responsibilities are.
Okay. Currently, I'm the head of digital for Havas Worldwide, Brussels. So it's one of the company of the Havas Group, and there I run a department of 7 people. We produce different web initiative and engagement, social media campaign, mobile apps, website, bannering. And we help the client to put together their content strategy and their web strategy, but also producing project and in an integrated fashion. Most of those clients work with the agency for their traditional advertising campaign.
So give us a sense of the scope of the agency. What are some of the accounts that you work with and the size of the agency overall?
One of my main accounts is the car maker Peugeot. It's we're doing a lot of localized and promotional work for the brand. A lot of the brand positioning is decided over in Paris, but the agency handles everything specific to the Belgian market. So that means localizing in Flemish and French, and also tackle the specificity of the Belgian market. Other accounts include the National Lottery. We have some healthcare clients from like Sanofi. We have a number of other retail accounts that are specifically operating in Belgium. So we, depending on what client and what their needs are, our engagement can be very different.
So, digital, we know, is a global increase in our business. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've noticed in how clients think about digital and their digital strategy in the different markets that you've worked in?
Well, clearly, digital is becoming a priority for growth, and also because now brands understand that they need to be more targeted in their communication, and they actually can achieve great results doing it online. So it's part of the mix, and it's growing. I would say that in terms of difference of the market, obviously the US market is more mature, more responsive work. It's a little more there's more investment, but it's kind of hard to compare because I would say Paris market is fairly mature as well, and Belgium is a smaller country with 2 languages, so the budgets are different, and the level of conviction and decision is a little lower in my experience in Belgium, also because less budget, so that makes their investment a little less broad and our intervention more limited. But it's not really a question on how anymore, it's when, and our clients are starting to get there, and sometimes they have their own agencies that work specifically on digital, or they will go to traditional agencies like Havas who offer a specific digital offering.
So what are some of the big challenges that you're facing now with some of the clients that you have?
Well, there's different challenges. I would say that in-house, it's more of a question of process from ideation to implementation on how to help our clients, which are going to the agency for traditional offering, but also are requiring a digital work. So how to make it work internally, and for the clients, I would say their challenges is to understand what makes sense, not just do something they heard, but trying to make sure that what the digital, where the digital is going to help them, is actually measurable and strategized in a correct way. So it's really accompanying them in finding the best solution for their objectives. And this objective, the strategical input is really important, sometimes not as valued as being asked to produce a certain piece of application or campaign, but it's sometimes hard to put everything together in a coherent content and digital strategy.
Any examples that you can share of turning a client around or moving a strategy forward?
We have some clients that are very receptive. I don't really want to give names. A few of them are actually in pitch mode right now, but we're in a way entering from a small. We're answering a small ask and try to blow that in more of a 360 approach. A lot of them are limited in terms of budget, so unfortunately, sometimes we present a very comprehensive digital strategy, and they only can finance part of it. So when you disconnect what they're buying and what we're thinking makes sense for their business, sometimes it's not as impactful, and that's where I think it's kind of a challenge. I haven't seen that as much in some of the accounts I work with in the US, such as Nissan, where there was definitely a bigger undertaking, and I would feel that it made more sense in terms of implementing everything we're offering. But I think the market is growing and is understanding that it's not just about having a Facebook page and creating a lot of likes. It's also about engagement and driving customers to their retail, or having KPIs that allows them to grow their business. But it's also being part of a conversation and be present in a smart way versus just doing what other people are doing.
So having had both French work experience as well as the US, what was the biggest thing that you had to get adjusted to as a leader building out these digital capabilities in Belgium?
Well, that's a good question. I think when I started my career in France, it was actually pretty straightforward. When I moved to the US, I learned how to adapt my communication style in a more careful way. I think I sugarcoat a little more, so that helped also improve my communication internally. I've also noticed that in Belgium, in my agency, we have two cultural groups. We have the French speaker group and we have the Flemish speaker group, and they themselves have cultural differences. So the Flemish are a little more direct, a little more in your face sometimes, and quick to act. The French speaking need more time to set up discussions, and sometimes can appear as being lengthy in their way of doing things. It's actually a pretty interesting dynamic. I'm sitting in the middle because from my Parisian upbringing to my American way of working, I'm kind of at the crossroad, which helps sometimes to navigate. But what I say probably my biggest cultural challenge is that I'm used to in a sense, and I'm by all means not saying that all American agencies operate that way, but I feel like once you have a goal and the management is putting the means toward it, you actually can get things done accordingly. And it seems that over here right now, it's a little longer of a process, and sometimes you know, there's a lot of wishful thinking and not always the means behind it, but for the reason that the market is not as supportive in that sense. Like, I'm sure if we had more budget coming in, probably I could staff up and we would have an easier workflow.
Yeah,
But I'm bringing
I
on.
think every company is still looking for more money, no matter how much they have, to
Yeah, and then
staff up a little bit more.
it's also a matter of the right people and the right management input, but it's also processes. One of my luck, I guess, is to have worked in a number of great agencies where I could pick up some processes, best practices, and trying to implement it. So now it's also about, you know, the change management and how successful I can be doing that, or you know, how successful the organization is able to implement it.
So tell us a little bit about what you've been able to do as a leader. What do you find that's worked in terms of shifting the culture in the organization and creating a digital mindset and a digital culture within the agency?
So this shift started before me, and so I wouldn't want to take credit for half of it. But what I made clear was that new processes need to be followed. So I'm being consistent in terms of trying to enforce it. Doesn't always work, but I'm using a lot of repetition and encouraging my team to also enforce the process I put into place. Not always able to do that, but still aiming for it. Also, one of the things I've been insisting on is to have scope of works to set up every project, and I feel like this also has cleaned up a little bit of the more messy way to approach projects, and this part helps a little bit to structure the workflow, help with the team knowing what they need to be doing, and also having, you know, regular status meetings. So that helps to structure a little bit um, the department. So as a leader, I'm trying to keep people on track with that, but I also need to be helping them stay motivated when sometimes, you know, they're being pulled in a lot of different direction. And unfortunately, being a middle manager and not on the upper management, I don't always have a say or you know, a decision in the priorities that are made, you know, upon ourselves, and we have to kind of adjust. So I'm trying to be really supportive, but it's probably also my management style. I'm not a micromanager. I tend to trust people. I just need to be in the loop and let them handle what they need to be doing. And luckily, I have a fairly senior type of group. They also have great work ethics, so it feels it's a little easier to get things done because they're just good people. But we also have to kind of stick together sometimes to make things happen or to push back on certain management requests and requirement. And I feel like because in my department the structure is fairly flat, even though I'm running it, we're able to achieve this kind of esprit de corps, and that's not. I would say we have a good atmosphere in our group compared to other part of the agencies, for instance.
Awesome. So the work culture, especially in the digital space in the US, is pretty much 24/7. People work very long hours. How does that compare in Belgium, and how are you able to manage workflow in that environment?
I think it depends of the agencies. I worked before in a social media agency where I felt like the hours were a lot more extended. I feel like currently there is a good understanding of what work-life balance need to be. So in the Belgian market, at least I noticed that people tend to be leaving the office around 6 or 6:30 or 7, which is in comparison probably fairly early to. I mean, Paris agency I worked at, you know, you would never really be out before 8, a little bit like I would assume New York is. So we work within those hours in the most productive way. But I also would think that we're not always super productive, and we're just being pulled a lot around different priorities, and that makes things a little harder. Of course, we have pitch phases. Like right now, we have like 3 or 4 different pitches, and we know that during those time, we've been required to work for the next couple weekends, or at least we've been informed that most likely some of us will be working those weekends. So those time happen, and I guess the people that are frontlining with client and in the pitch work always do have to pull up with more extended hours and more often than other groups. So hopefully this will create a result for the agency that by bringing new businesses we can staff up and have a better life balance quality. But overall, I feel like it's pretty well respected, at least in this agency. But again, I worked in places in California also where there was a good understanding that people have a life outside of work.
So outside of work, tell us about the digital culture there, or the advertising culture in Belgium. What have you been able to get involved in within the industry, and what's the environment like for someone that's excited about being in the business?
Well, I noticed that there's a pretty refreshing and active startup community. There's a lot of small and young entrepreneurs, and I feel like that's a pretty big dynamic. There is also, contrary to I guess I had the opinion that advertising kind of sucked in Belgium because I didn't really see much of it until I got there and wasn't too impressed. But I've since seen really cool campaigns. I went to the CCB last week, which was kind of a gathering for words for different agencies, and it seemed that actually most of the traditional agencies with or without the digital capacity are more on the Flemish side, but there are events around technology. I'm actually due to do a couple workshops for female and technology incubators. So I feel like there's a pretty active market. People have smartphone all the time. They tweet, Facebook. Of course, the market being more small, we don't hit those kind of numbers, but people are definitely well connected, and there is not a barrier to entry. Like I think in London, I believe they're not using their smartphone as much because the data plan is so expensive. In Belgium, you can get one for 30 euros, and it's actually helping people. And everybody's got 2 screens. I mean, I haven't seen a much difference in terms of habit than I've experienced in the US. We just I think have cheaper data plans. But no, I think the technology is definitely more active in people's life. I think the brand need to keep up with that and to start investing a little more. Again, it's a small market, so that may not happen as fast or in the same proportion.
Well, thank you for that. So we always ask our guests what they do to thrive. What are some of the things that you're doing that you incorporate into your day-to-day or your life to make sure that you're thriving?
Well, okay, so I'm a pretty optimistic person, and sometimes it's hard to stay that way when I'm facing with challenges. So I would say I'm trying to approach life in a pretty holistic way, and that means really fostering time for myself and working out and meditating and dancing, which are some of my passions. Spending time having fun with either family or friends, and I luckily have a nice nature view from my new apartment. So I think those are really what keeps me in check. I also like because I think it's part of my freelance background is to always have a deadline of some sort or I would say a project that will start in a few months, and I'm trying to make plans for vacation and kind of that becomes a goal. So regardless of what I'm doing every day, that I always have something to look forward to. But I'm really trying lately to be more mindful about being in the moment and being present at what I'm doing, and then doing my best and trying to detach from the outcome. In the end, I don't always have power on what I'm supposed to be controlling, and I have to accept to let it go. So that's kind of my key thing that I'm trying to keep in mind every day.
That sounds like you're kind of headed in the definitely in the right direction around being grateful. So any final thoughts for the Thrive community? Any suggestions and recommendations if someone wants to build their digital career in Belgium?
I would not necessarily pick Belgium as that main market. I think, however, when you come with a very strong experience, or if you come from another market, you do have a lot to offer. The market here is very also focused around the European Commission. So it's actually a nice shift you can take into account, is that yes, there is an advertising world, but there is also an entire institutional corporation and advocacy world in Brussels, where I think there's a lot of interesting things to do, especially because the PR world is evolving towards social media and need that kind of mindset and skill set. And then yeah, I think it's probably a harder market to get into in terms of just what you may be used to, just like I did. But I think there's a lot of opportunities that you just have to find, and that's probably maybe the harder work, is to find that niche where you can thrive.
Awesome. On that note, on that thriving note, thank you, Sophie, for participating in a Thrive Talk. And I'm sure if anyone has any questions or interested in learning more from Sophie, I'm sure she'll be interested in happy to respond.
Don't hesitate to get my contact. I'm happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us for another Thrive Talk, and so enjoy your day.
Thank you, Carol.